Hey, welcome back everyone. Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. So in today's video, we're going to talk about how to draw a heroic pose. We're going to start with something very static and boring and talk about how we can adjust that and make some different changes. And this is just going to be very rough and loose, but it should give you the ideas and concepts that you can use on other poses for your comics. What I'll do is I'll start sketching something and I'll break my lead. That's what that little spray of lead is there. Always seems to happen. So I'll start drawing something and I'll find myself going to a very typical way of drawing something. So for instance, I'm going to draw a character standing here, kind of superhero pose, I guess, but just hands on their hips. And you'll see if I don't think too much about it, and I just go for what I know, basic shape, memorization, and kind of connecting things, it'll come out very static, very boring. And then what I like to do is acknowledge that and then practice fighting the urge that led me to this version. So even though I could say, well, I'll widen the stance of the character, which maybe will make it look a little more interesting. But overall, it's already kind of shot. It's already started on the wrong path of really redundant behavior, but just uninteresting, an uninteresting version of this type of character, pose, stance. I don't even know if it's the stance. It's the angle. It's just boring. Okay, so and then even if I give him like the downward tilt to the head, looking towards camera, so it's a little bit angled away from the body, it just still isn't enough. Proportions are a bit weird, obviously, but I'm not going to draw feet today, sorry. But yeah, so like just like that, it's just not as interesting as it could be. So what I like to do is take something like this and say, well, I'm not going to take it any further and re-render over this. It doesn't matter how much I put on top of it. This is still going to end up being a boring shot. Now this might work if I had like a close-up shot of a character over here and they're just having a conversation, then whatever, then a shot like this kind of makes more sense. But if this is the only thing in the scene or the main thing in the scene, this is just boring, regardless. So let's try to take this a bit further. Again, I'm not going to change the narrative of it as far as like what the character is doing. So it's going to be the same thing. But what I'm immediately going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I like the downward tilt of the head. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to angle the shot. And I'm going to really try to push that arc of the back. So here you don't see much of an arc there. Here I'm going to really try to push that arc of the back. So I'm going to bow out that chest a lot. I'm going to make it where we're looking up at this character as well. So that's going to help considerably. Because of this perspective and this upshot, I think the stance is going to look more impactful as well. So bring these legs way out. Just kind of blocking it in here real quick, making sure it all fits. If I move this head down, you're going to probably see a little bit less height of the neck because we are looking up at the character more. And then I need to make sure to, make the legs get larger as they come down here, just so we kind of reinforce that. And then also, we're doing an upshot, so we can get in some perspective there going upward. And then we could like throw in some rolling smoke. Okay, if we're just trying to figure out a way to make this look more interesting, we'd use other dynamics and things to get that to look a bit more interesting. But mainly bowing out of the chest, really pushing the difference from the head to the upper torso, really trying to push back, get some real, back and forth curvature to the legs. So forward bend, back bend, really try to play with that as well as I define the anatomy. But just like that, we got something that would look a little more interesting. Now these are, bad sketches. This is a pretty rough sketch still, but I would much rather take this one to finality. And there's other things I still need to work on, like I'm gonna bring this arm out and really pay attention to the way that I can get like the under shape of the forearm and the overlaps just right, so that it carries through the perspective up this way. So for instance, it's really easy to draw an arm and say, well, I'll just draw a regular arm like I've drawn 100 times over. And you shadow it, and all of a sudden, by the time you get done, it's almost like you drew it too parallel to the view. But in a shot like this, what I would really try to focus on, let me see if I can just illustrate just this one part and show you the difference, is I'd really say, okay, I need every part of this perspective to be working. So I'm going to really focus on the overlaps, maybe pushing the anatomy up a little higher so that we're seeing, make sure we're really seeing the bottom of the forearm here. And then this bit needs to go in front of the bicep more. Really need to see the underside of the chest here and the lat. So anyways, all this needs to kind of reinforce that and coincide or go with that perspective to make this work. And I think a lot of times that's why we avoid, kind of looks the same really, but as I work into it, I'm going to think about that. It's really just being aware of these things that, make it show through in your work. It's when you're not aware of it and you're just drawing for the sake of drawing, and then whatever you get. Sometimes it's great, and other times like, what's it missing? What is it lacking? A lot of times we're just like forgetting about our perspective or our narrative or any number of things really. Composition, instead of actually thinking about a composition, we just throw something together and hope it works. And sometimes it does, and other times it doesn't. But we want to be aware of that so that we can recreate our successes. Yeah, so to me, this would be something more dynamic. And then, obviously other things. If they got a cape, I can really use that cape to do some fun compositional things. But it's a lot more interesting to look at this than it is to look at that. I don't care how cool you render this one, with a nice cape flowing or whatever, bring it in front of the leg and try to make it look cooler. There's definitely things you can do, but immediately you can take a basic boring pose and make it more interesting like that. And then as you have excitement for it, that transfers to everything else. So all of a sudden you're like, man, I bet these buildings would look really cool back here. Get this nice upshot. And instead of like what I find myself doing, if I'm not as enthused about the initial start of it, well, then that lack of enthusiasm plays through into even my background and the other elements. But if I'm really excited about what I'm seeing here with this character, then some of that excitement goes to the entire scene, because I'm like, wow, I want this to look as cool as possible. Even the clouds, I'm like, well, what if I do something cool with the clouds, and I've got this cool upshot, what if I can make those kind of point towards the character a bit? And again, the energy goes throughout. So that's why I always stress in a lot of these videos that thumbnailing and getting the concepts down, spending as much time as needed in getting that part right is so important, because it's the blueprint for the rest of it. And I don't know, I've just found that if I don't have that exciting initial start, I can get bored and maybe not even want to finish the piece, but because I'm like, it's just not as cool as I thought it would be. But usually you can tell that right in your rough sketch and your thumbnails. So thumbnail a lot, get a lot of stuff going, and again, try to change something from being boring to more expressive. and see what you can come up with. So there you go. That's today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. More content on the way very soon. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.